Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
Thank you for joining me, David. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Glad to be here.
You're known in certain circles. You're the director of risk management for the LA Clippers, which is super interesting and cool. I think everyone wants to know about that. But more so, I thought we could talk about risk management as a career, how you persuade people, things that take a little finesse, right? We have some mutual friends, and they said that you're all about finesse. So I decided that would be the theme of the show. But before we get started, David, how did you get into your current position, and what's your story?
Well, in terms of this position, it was opportunity. It was posted on LinkedIn. I saw it, and what really appealed to me and what really gave me the opportunity is this role was newly created. So we're starting a position from the ground up, and I have experience with that. From my background, I started as a workers' comp adjuster, learned claims a little bit, went to Dave & Buster's as a claims manager, and just learned general liability and just the whole business as a whole.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started the risk department for Raising Cane's. So that was my really big break in terms of working with organizations, building the risk department from the ground up. Similarly, I did that with California Pizza Kitchen. And then I did some, spending a little time at San Manuel. Then the past 5 years, I've been at Cummins at Google. Similarly, newly created role, focusing on risk management, crisis, safety management, things of that nature. So that really was giving me the opportunity to take this job with the LA Clippers, because we're not only just a basketball organization, but we're sports and entertainment.
Right.
So it's a newly created position, and it's to build the risk department from the ground up.
You know, I've been talking a lot to different sports entertainment companies, and a lot of them are just spinning up risk programs, right? Where they're bringing people on. What are some of your go-to methods for helping start a program, educate people, get people on board?
Yeah, the first thing you do is you just learn the organization from top to bottom. You really have to learn the organization so you know what the risks are. And you have to be able to build relationships with all the different stakeholders within the organization, from operations to finance to HR to just the whole organization. So with that, you learn that. And then as a risk manager, there's core programs in terms of risk that you always have, or property and casualty, things of that nature. So there's a playbook, so to speak, in regard to that. But once you learn the organization, learn what the risks are, then you try to figure out what is the organization's risk appetite. So that lets you know, all right, so we have this exposure here. Do we want to just let it sit there, or do we want to get insurance to cover it? Or do we want to just have best practices to mitigate that risk, or a little bit of both? So you really go through that exercise all the time. Every time you join an organization, and annually, you should do that annually as well.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about risk appetite. It's something we talk a lot about, that risk managers say, hey, if we didn't take risks, there wouldn't be any business for us to do, right? We have to take different risks in what we're doing. How different is something like Raising Cane's from the LA Clippers? That seems pretty different, right? So it seems like different playbooks, even if we're talking about the same lines of insurance, right? Different things. And then with the LA Clippers, you're also doing a lot of one-time events and things like that you have to manage. So is what you've deployed is different level of risk by program? How have you scaled that and built that?
No, exactly. It is by program. So sometimes you'll have exposures in one organization that you may not have in another. Raising Cane's is a good example. We didn't have alcohol liability. We didn't have, from the dram shop perspective. So with Dave & Buster's, that was a big one, alcohol liability.
Yeah.
So similarly, at Dave & Buster's, we didn't have exposure from a crime perspective in terms of being robbed. Right. Whereas at Raising Cane's, you're open at 2 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. Just a restaurant, so you get robbed. So it really is based upon, right? Yeah. So it really is based upon the business type. And like I said, you look at your exposures, and you try to determine, all right, what can we do differently here, or what can we do to aid us with that? So that's pretty much what we always try to do.
I think in order to be successful, a lot of risk managers say, I'm risk manager in construction or property management or entertainment. I think that one of the things that you have to do is be able to understand how these businesses are similar and different from one another in order to work with them. How important is your relationship with a broker as you go in and start?
Oh man, that's very critical, because as a risk manager, I think in any profession, you're not a know-it-all. You may think you are, but you're really not.
Yeah.
So you're really going to have to rely upon experts at certain things. A good example is like this week, I'm meeting with cyber folks. I'm meeting with property folks. I'm meeting with workers' comp folks, general liability folks. I'm strong in some of those areas. but in some of those areas, I don't know what the heck's going on. So you have to rely upon your broker. And with the broker, your producer or your main contact, they don't know it all, but their team is comprised of folks.
Yeah.
So as a team, you do know it all.
What do you prioritize, breadth of a broker or like specialty of a broker?
I think it's depth. I mean, you can have a broker that specializes in, I say, sports, but like now, we pivoted from being sports to June 28th, we opened into a dome. Now we're sports and entertainment.
Right.
So I need some depth.
Yeah.
I also need some depth in terms of your expertise. You know, if all you know is like placing coverages, what about the loss control aspect? So you really need depth.
What about like, let's say the LA Clippers, before you came on, you built a new program. How hard was it to transform all those vendors into being compliant and understanding, you know, the complex world of risk? Because you also have to consult with them and help them, right?
Now that's a challenging part, because one of the things you always hear is, well, this team doesn't require that. Well, their team isn't this team. Yeah. You know, our type of risk or how you run an organization is totally different. So there is a transition and onboarding program with that, and we see that a lot. You know, with our certificates of insurance, you know, different requirements, that's thrown out a lot. This promoter may say, well, they took this such and such. Well, we're not taking it, so
yeah,
it's a little different.
Yeah, I think that one thing that's interesting maybe to listeners, that your career both with Raising Cane's and California Pizza Kitchen and with the LA Clippers now, is the secondary exposure of the PR risk if something doesn't go right? Yeah. That has to be a big concern for these different organizations and how they manage themselves.
Yeah, reputational risk would always be big, and sometimes really can't quantify that with everybody. You know, when you're saying, what if this were to happen, or this were to happen. I think what's helped us in the past, like as a risk practitioner, in the past like 15 to 20 years, the big what ifs that we were saying, oh, this would never happen, like a pandemic. Well, guess what? It happened. Yeah. Or if we say, well, we really don't need, well, we'll never get, no employees are going to be stealing from us. Well, now it's happening on a regular basis in terms of franchises, so you need crime policies. So a lot of the what ifs have been, all right, when it does, so now you got opportunity to prepare for it.
You know, the best you can without exposing too much. What's one of the biggest challenges you faced this year that you're really working on that's been tough to crack?
I wouldn't say anything's been tough to crack, but it's just been tough consolidating all of our programs. You know, we have 3 different programs basically, because we also own and manage the Forum. We have Into a Dome, and then we have LA Clippers.
Yeah, right. So
just bringing all those programs together into functioning as one. It hasn't been difficult, but it's challenging because you're bringing different cultures, you're establishing new cultures, you're establishing a new benchmark. So that part is the most rewarding, but it's also the most challenging from a change management perspective.
Where do you roll up? Like, do you roll up under finance? Do you roll up operations, or?
No, good question there. So I would say all of the above, but I report to our general counsel. So there's a straight line to our general counsel, and then there's a dotted line to our CFO, dotted line to our chief people officer, and of course I partner with the officers who I'm going to be sitting with at Intuit. So it's, as a risk practitioner, if you really are a true risk practitioner, you're supporting every department in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see, what else is on here? Let's do some rapid fire questions. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
cool.
All right, risky or too risky? Now, I'll tell you, historically, the risk managers are not all too keen on the too risky side, so we'll see if we get you. Using a ladder without someone spotting you, risky or too risky? You do it though? You get up on the house and clean the gutters, or do what you do?
Yeah, I will, yeah. But I mean, I'll take little measures in between there to make sure I don't bust my butt, but I'll do it.
All right, you're planning to go bungee jumping and you didn't see the check person check all of the straps.
No, that's too risky. There's a difference between falling off a ladder and spraining my ankle versus losing my life. Yeah, that's too risky.
That's too risky. Okay, attempting to fix a leaky gas pipe. I don't know why they thought you were so handy.
No, that's too, and I'm not, so that's too risky.
Too risky.
Yeah.
It took me, I was a little scared. I had to get under and like do the water heater, you know, it went out or whatever. And I was like,
you could have been scalded from the hot water.
Too risky.
Too risky.
I wasn't right. Before we end, just, you know, we have a lot of people out there listening to the podcast looking for decision makers. I think you get some practical tips on being a good risk practitioner and building a program. But what are some of your advice? Like what's like if someone's starting on your team that you would tell them day one?
I would tell them to learn all facets of the business. So a lot of times, like for me, I came up as a workers' comp adjuster. You can't just stay with claims. I came in through claims, but so the next question was, how do I prevent these claims from happening? So I had to learn loss control. And then I was like, well, you're pretty limited if you're just going to be a claims manager. I even say you're going to be pretty limited as a risk manager if you don't learn the whole business. So with that, you can build your portfolio and grow from there. The past, I would say 10 years, I've been involved in enterprise risk management.
Yeah.
And enterprise is just as it says, enterprise, which is the whole company, risk management. So with that, I'm able to sit at the table with the chief people officer, the chief financial officer, chief technology officer, and you're helping drive those decisions versus just being known as a safety guy or as the claims guy. You don't want that if you really want to, I'll just say, earn the big bucks as a risk manager.
Yeah. I mean, also like the risk managers are talking about, like, they're getting a bigger seat at the table now. Like, more people are interested in the overlapping programs.
Depends upon the organization and how the organization reviews risk. Like I said, some organizations may view risk as strictly a claims function. Some may view it as strictly a safety function. You want to be able to show that there's risk inherent in every line of the business and how you can drive value with that. So that's really what you want to do.
When do you build guidelines versus build procedures? Like, what's the decision factor for you?
Well, that's a good question. Guidelines versus procedures. For the most part, you want to see yourself as collaborative. So I would say guidelines. I'm saying guidelines, but in my mind, no, this is going to be our procedure. But in order to build collaboration and not step on somebody's toes, so to speak, let's establish some guidelines.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate talking to you.
Thank you as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to trustlayer.io. And then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.